And good morning, everyone, and welcome to Small Biz Matters, the half-hour program where you work on your business rather than in it. My name is Alexi Boyd, your trusted lover of all things small business, admin expert, bookkeeper, well, just wearer of many hats, really, which is what small business is all about. And it's a bit about what we're going to talk about today on the show. Very excited to have a guest in the studio with me. We've got Ush Danak from Collaborate HR, who's going to be talking to us about, well, it's a topic that a lot of small business owners don't know a lot about. It's certainly not something I'd heard of before I'd met up with Ush, and definitely not something we apply to our business. So today I want you to grab your pens and pencils because we're going to have some great tips for you when it comes to HR and even running your own business and factoring in this very important aspect into your business. And that aspect today is emotional intelligence. Now, when I think of emotional intelligence, I actually think of my daughter, which is really funny. My daughter, Olivia, is, I would consider to be very emotionally intelligent, and it's really opened my eyes up to that form of intelligence that we don't normally think of in the school system. And I keep saying to myself, it's okay, sweetie, when you get older, your intelligence will be recognised, because right now it doesn't tick the maths and the everything boxes and the literary boxes. Now, would you agree, Ush, welcome to the show, first of all.
Thanks
for
you.
coming.
Thanks, Alexi.
Now, would you agree that emotional intelligence is just not something... It's a new word, is it not? It's a bit of a buzzword that's been floating around.
Yeah, look, it's been around for a long time, but it's only at the moment really just getting traction. And I don't like using the term buzzword, but it is a bit of a buzzword at the moment. But to be honest, I don't think people actually know what it means. So everyone knows what IQ is, and it's your intelligent quotient. And EQ is the emotional quotient. So it's basically using the other side of your brain. And hopefully we get to a stage as business owners and people where we can really use both sides. And I guess, look, from a hiring perspective as a small business owner as well, the most common mistake people make is they hire for technical ability. And I've done that in my own business as well. Like, I've made sure I've had a really good, solid HR person. And what's really missing is their EQ. So can they, build those relationships? Can they build trust? Do they have really good influence skills? Can they sell? And, when you look at hiring, you really do need to look at the EQ component too.
And with emotional intelligence, we're not really just talking about someone who's sitting in an office surrounded by other people and can they get on. I mean, that's kind of quite important and not something we often think about when we're hiring people. But it's also how they engage with not only the immediate office environment, but also how they engage with clients. And so we could be talking about someone who's literally a receptionist all the way through to
absolutely
an expert dealing with clients.
So it could be anyone. And I guess the area that I really like to focus on, emotional intelligence, is yourself, because it all begins with self-awareness. So for me, when I set my business up, one of the areas of emotional intelligence is resilience. And my resilience was at an all-time low when it probably should have been at a high starting my own business. And it's just all those fears that you have, the stuff that does keep you up at night as a small business owner. And it begins with self-awareness and learning how to build that resilience up and build that muscle up.
Do you think that resilience also comes from doing your research and making sure that you're fully informed and you know what to expect when it comes to setting up a business?
Yes and no. I think you can still do all the research in the world, but if your resilience is still low and you haven't got a handle on those emotions, or you don't understand what those emotions are, and you can't connect that emotion to a physical symptom within your body, then research isn't really going to help.
So emotional intelligence, are we talking about, is it just an awareness? Is it the connectivity with other people? How would you literally textbook define emotional intelligence?
Good question. So for me, emotional intelligence is really about being aware of the emotions you're feeling. But the key to that is it's around being aware of the emotion in the moment. So you don't make those knee-jerk reactions. You don't want to be that person in the workplace or in your office that has just shouted at someone because they knocked on your door when you were in a meeting or when you had your head stuck in a laptop. So it's really about going, okay, well, what am I feeling right now? And how am I going to use that information to manage my emotions, and how do I control myself? So, it really does prevent you from having those knee-jerk moments. And look, we've all had them. We've had them in the workplace. I know I've had them with my 7-year-old at home, and then later on going, why did I do that? And as you build your understanding of emotions, you get a better understanding of what it means and how you link it to what you feel in your body.
I'm going to be devil's advocate here, and I'm sure there's a few listeners out there thinking about this. Who's better at this, men or women?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I get that asked all the time. I'm not going to hang my hat on one or the other. I think emotional intelligence is something that can be learned at any age. And look, I've got into workshops, and I think women are better at naming the emotion, whereas I think men are better at linking the physical side of it to what they're feeling. So I was talking to Gia this morning in the car, dropping her to school, and I said, give me some emotions that you feel. And she was like disappointed, frustrated, sad.
How old is she?
She's 7. Yeah. So it was pretty good. Whereas if I ask, a male in their 40s, the usual stuff that comes out of their mouth is stress, anger. You talk to women and most of their stuff is anxiety, fear. So, you can get common emotions if you want to sort of break it up that way. But I think men are pretty cluey with being able to identify that emotion and linking it to a physical symptom.
Yeah, talking of physical symptoms, you talked about the reactionary nature of our emotions when we're in the workplace and how that's really important.
Yeah.
Obviously, that can tie in with what we've got life skills that we can take home with us as well. Is it anything beyond that? Is it not just about the reactions, but is it also about self-awareness and helping to control your own emotions? I mean, do we really want to control them? I mean, we're small business owners. We need to be passionate. We need to be excited about what we do. How much, when we talk about control, is necessary?
Yeah, so I think, like I said, it's about self-awareness. So understanding what you feel with that emotion. And then what you do is you use that understanding to manage your relationships. So I'll give you a really good example. Our lovely friend Geraldine, she's probably listening on the show right now.
Hi, Geraldine.
Hi, Geraldine. So Geraldine's my accountant, and I was going through a phase of having some issues with my bank, and they just weren't cooperating. And I remember picking the phone up to Geraldine, and I was like really stressed out, and she got the brunt of my stress and frustration on that phone call. And later on I'm going, oh my God, I'm an EQ coach, that was really poor form. And I rang her and she goes, Ush, this is just it, we are small business, and we do use our close friends, our people to vent. So I think it's just acknowledging it afterwards, even if you have had that moment and going, you know what, yeah, I felt that and it happened, but I'm now aware of it, whereas probably before I wouldn't have been aware that I had that knee-jerk reaction.
That's right. And that's maybe just an awareness factor and walking away and the ability to apologise at some point.
And I also think it's about picking up the emotion in other people. So once you've understood the emotions in yourself, it's about having that social awareness as well. So if you are leading a team, or if it's a small team and it's remote, how do you pick up on those social cues of what that person's feeling? And it goes beyond just listening. It's actually listening for emotion. It's listening for what's not said as well.
And that's where using that as a tool of being a good manager is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. A good leader.
Yeah, we get so heads down, bums up with our own business, and too many of us make the mistake of working on it, not in it. And really, we are just another employee, but you are also a manager, and you're a manager at every point during that day. So being sort of tuned into your employees' emotions is good, but you've got to be compassionate as well. That's the beauty of being small business. We're good at that.
And I think I like the word empathy as well. So empathy is something that's not used as much. I think a lot of people confuse empathy with sympathy. And empathy is really just being able to walk in that other person's shoes. So whether it's a client that you're servicing that's frustrating you, or it's an employee that you've got that hasn't turned up or that's let you down, it's about having that empathy, putting yourself in their shoes and going, okay, well, what is going on with this person, and what am I really going to have that conversation around? So again, being in tune with that.
Because those disciplinary conversations are not particularly comfortable in a small team.
No.
So we have our skill set, and we think about how we can use it with both the colleagues that we work with. Is it an important skill to have with, say, something like networking or marketing, do you think?
Yeah, so another competency of emotional intelligence is influence. So influence is really the ability to state what you want to state really clearly and powerfully, and bring people on that journey with you. So it definitely in networking, they talk about that 60-second, elevator pitch, or, what your unique selling point is are you really clear on your vision, and can you really, powerfully and clearly say what you want to say in a short amount of time and bring people on board with you. From a HR perspective, I've worked with a lot of businesses who, they're great doers, they're great grinders. And then when I say, what is it that you want to achieve? What's your goal? They really struggle to formulate that. And if you struggle to formulate that as a business owner, how do your clients understand that?
Yes. Yeah, if you can't say it to people who are
Yeah.
potential clients, how do you definitely
Correct.
say it to your clients?
Yeah. So definitely learning emotional intelligence is all about, how do you become more influential in what you want to say, what you want to show, what is your message, what's your vision?
So it feeds through. So if we're really talking about something that feeds through to our marketing in some way, shape or form, because as small businesses, often what we produce is ourselves. And so you need to put yourself out there a little bit. And then you've got obviously the ability to work with others and your colleagues. If you perhaps work in a co-working space, you better have your
Yes.
emotional intelligence switched on for that.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Intentionality is another competence of emotional intelligence, and intentionality is really about making that decision so you're not procrastinating in what you need to do. And, as small business owners, how many times have we written a to-do list in the morning and, we've gone, right, this is what we're going to work on, but the intentionality just isn't there for whatever reason, whether there's distractions or whether there's priorities that are competing. And what emotional intelligence teaches you is that mindset of going, right, this is what I need to achieve, and then actually do the next step about this is how I'm going to achieve it.
So it's beyond a to-do list, really.
Absolutely.
It's tapping in that
The mindset.
self-awareness as well, isn't it?
Yeah,
Really?
and the mindset of, well, if there are going to be competing priorities, how am I going to be productive? What am I going to do? And really setting that intention to go, well, no matter how busy it gets, I know this is something I'm going to complete today.
Yeah, it's really important that I get
Yes.
it done. Prioritising. It's
Yes.
I guess that's a form of emotional intelligence, isn't it?
It is,
really?
yeah. And I think, one tip if I can give you is with a to-do list, if you're going to start writing lists and you're prioritising against that list, write down the time it's going to take you to do that task. And that's something that people forget. So you can have a list of 10 things that you want to achieve in a day, but if one item is going to take you 4 hours, there's going to be a little bit of disappointment as you get down your list and you go, I haven't really, factored that in yet.
It's a concept I've been talking about quite a bit lately, not only to myself but just to other business owners as well, and that's the ability to be a bit gentle with yourself and not set such ridiculous high expectations. And this whole 6-month, 12-month plan, I think we need to start saying to ourselves as businesses, 12-month, 2-year. And that's okay, because there's a lot of other things that are wrapped up in the small business world and a lot of distractions and a lot of other aspects to our lives that are just as important as running a small business that you need to factor into that. Is that all form a sort of a part of emotional intelligence, being kind to yourself, setting nicer expectations?
It is. It definitely is. Again, back to self-awareness of how you're feeling. So with the goal setting, something that I work on my clients with is actually 90-day goals and 90-day plans. So we have 4 plans of 90 days, plan on a page, and the 4 of them make up a 12-month period. But what that allows you to do is it sort of gives you that check-in at the 90-day mark to go, well, have I achieved what I wanted to achieve? And if I haven't, that's okay. Let's move it into that next 90-day block.
And maybe it'll give you a better awareness of what the next block was going to be, and you can manipulate it.
Yeah, and another good technique is to theme your 90 days. So have a theme. So, one might be, marketing for the first 90 days. Second theme might be influence. Third theme might be commitment, and have a picture. So find a picture, post it up, almost on a board, and then it sort of themes as to go, well, what are you going to generally focus on apart from the day-to-day stuff? But what is it in that 90 days that you want to focus on? So for me in the next 90 days, as I want to talk to you about, as I mentioned, is, some of the small business stuff I want to do. So my theme is really connection for this quarter.
And you can probably, I do like the idea of a mood board. Like when they first came out, I was thinking, it's a bit frou-frou, isn't it? I'm going to stick some pretty flowers on there. What am I going to be thinking? But in fact, if you make it quite specific, and like you said, if you block things out and you go, right, for this period of time, I'm concentrating on this. Let's find an image that gets me a bit excited.
Yeah.
And if you're going to be doing admin, I challenge all of you out there to find an image that gets you excited about admin.
That's a tough one.
Yeah. Getting excited about admin is tricky. Look, we're going to take a quick short break here on Small Biz Matters. You're listening to Triple H 100.1 FM. We'll be back after this. So we are back in the room right now talking to our fabulous guest, Ush Danak from Collaborate HR. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thanks, Alexi.
Now, just before the break, we were talking all about emotional intelligence, how that sits, what the definition is, and how you can utilise that in your business from a day-to-day perspective. We talked a little bit about to-do lists and how you can factor in emotional intelligence into that. And it's a bit about connectivity with people around you, and also having an awareness of what you can and can't accomplish. And I guess that's really important, looking at not only a day-to-day level but forward planning as well, because we have so many other issues, I wouldn't say issues, but other things demanding of our time, for example. And my suggestion is that maybe rather than having specifically a 12-month plan and thinking you've got to achieve everything in 12 months, that you extend that out a bit. But I do like your idea of the 90-day plans, because we have to, I guess the business planning aspect of small business needs to evolve. I mean, how many of us have gone, right, I'm starting up a small business, I'm going to do a 10-page business plan, and then I'm going to put it in the drawer and never look at it again, which is what many of us do. So revisiting that as a to-do list without being too much of a to-do list.
Yeah, and look, things do change, and this is where the resilience part comes in. And I guess one of the things I want to share with you guys is a bit of a coaching, an EQ coaching technique. So if you've heard of the rabbit hole syndrome, it's where you have one negative thought as a business owner, and that leads into another negative thought, and before you know it, you're down this rabbit hole and you really struggle to sort of see the light and bring yourself up. And I'll share a personal story about mine, and a couple of tips to how to help yourself get out of this rabbit hole. So there was a client I was working with, and going really well, and it just finished, and it didn't finish for any other negative reason other than that we did a really good job and we finished 3 months ahead of schedule. So there I was with my 90-day plan going, yep, I've got time to sort of replace that client and replace that income. And had a client meeting, and they were like, Ush, we love you. You've done everything, we needed, and we're good. And I was like, oh, okay. I got in my car driving home, and I could feel this rabbit hole syndrome and my resilience just go from 10 to negative 10. And I just went into this mode of, oh my God, this panic of, I'm not ready to replace this client. What does that mean for my income? And what am I going to do? And there's a really good coaching technique that you do, and it basically is a series of questions. So question one that you ask yourself is what is the worst case scenario in this situation? So because my resilience was low, my worst case scenario was I'm going to have to tell my husband that I want to sell my house so I can keep my business afloat.
Well, you just went to step 20 there,
I know. That's what I was saying on my drive home, going, oh my God, I got to sell my house. I love Hornsby. I'm going to have to move. And then I went home and I said to Nim, I went, oh my God, I just finished working with this client. I don't know what we're going to do. And he's like, okay, sit down over dinner, Gia's with us, and he's like, right, let's talk about the 7 questions. And he goes, well, what's your worst case? And I was like, oh, my worst case is we're going to have to sell our house. And he went, really? He goes, do you know what my worst case is? And I went, no. And he said, my worst case is that you're back to where you started with your business and you need to go look for a client. And I went,
good point. Very good point.
Oh my God, that's so true. So with these series of questions, what you want to do is really ask yourself, what is the worst case in that scenario? The second question you want to ask yourself is, what is the probability of that worst case happening? You then go to, what is the best case scenario that can happen and the probability of that best case happening? And then the fifth question is, what is the most likely outcome? So for me, the best case was, well, it's opened up 2 days a week to fill up with a new client that probably might even pay me more.
And business development work as well.
And business development, exactly. And then when I looked at what the likely outcome would be, the likely outcome was, well, I was probably going to find a client within 3 to 4 weeks as opposed to the 3-month lag that I thought I was going to have. And then once you've done that, it sort of really drags you out of this rabbit hole because it's made you go, okay, well, I've identified the worst case. I've also looked at what the best case is. I've now really gone, okay, well, this is probably what's going to happen as a likely outcome. And the last question, which is really powerful, is, what are the steps you're going to take to make that likely outcome happen? So it's actually implementation. So it's not just sitting there going airy-fairy, okay, worst case, best case. the last question is really about, okay, so if I want to find a client in the next 3 weeks, what are my next steps? What am I going to do to get that?
And you know what's interesting is you went from spiraling down.
Absolutely.
With asking the questions.
Yeah.
You've gone back up.
Going back up.
Started with the worst case. You've worked your way up to, what's the best case? What's the likelihood of that?
Yes.
And what can I do to get myself out of here?
Yeah.
So, yeah, you really dug out of the hole.
Business owners, I kid you not, when I speak to them and I'm coaching them on EQ, they go through this rabbit hole probably 10, 11 times a day with different scenarios, but they don't realize they're doing it. And that's what is the stuff that keeps them up at night. That is what lowers their resilience. And going back to self-awareness, I know I've said that a few times, but it's knowing when you're having that feeling where you feel like you're dropping down that hole and going, okay, worst case, best case, most likely, and actually just talking to someone about it. So talking to your friend and say, hey, this is a situation. What do you think is the best case or worst case here? I use it for Gia. So, if she's had a bad day at school, it's something that, we can go through with her as well. Initially, when you have the 7 questions, it feels a bit rigid and structured. But once you understand the process, you can almost just talk to yourself in the car on the drive home. And the other reason I want to share that story with you is that, I'm a work in progress myself. So emotional intelligence is something that takes time to build. It's something you learn over time, you develop. So, don't expect that you can go read a book on EQ and, make yourself perfect overnight. We're all work in progress and we all need that support around us.
And speaking of support, it's probably a good little exercise for our listeners out there to have a think about who would be the ideal person in this scenario to really talk through those 7 questions with. It may not necessarily be your partner. It certainly most likely won't be a parent because there's a lot of baggage there. But there might be someone who's another small business colleague. It doesn't have to be in your industry.
No.
Someone who's sort of going through the same process and you can trust with them, because it's interesting what you were saying there about sharing your experiences with others. It really shows a side of vulnerability.
Yeah.
And it's something we don't do because we have to be seen as successful and doing
Correct.
well 100% of the time. It's a very risky place to be because you can't be up all the time.
Absolutely. And just on that, Alexi, with the whole world of social media, we only see snippets of people's lives. And I always look at emotions as actors on a stage. So you need to embrace the negative emotions that you are going to feel. And it's like actors on a stage. They're going to do their bit, they're going to have their time, they're going to walk off and new actors will come on. And sometimes those actors will be frustration, fear, scared, anxiety. And I think if you suppress them, it's only going to sort of build up and build up and build up, and then you are going to be like a pressure cooker that ends up having that knee-jerk reaction.
It'll just be a giant monologue that'll go on forever.
Absolutely. So, just embrace whatever emotion it is that you're feeling and don't be scared of it. And it will go. I promise you it will go.
Tell you one thing that is really useful you will get from your parents, because they have a lifetime of experience, is just some really good mantras. So something that my mum always says is, you've done it before, you'll do it again.
Yes.
That's a really good one.
Yeah.
And, something an old friend of mine once said to me when it's kind of tacky, but I hadn't heard it before. When one door closes, another door opens. And sometimes those mantras, maybe they can go up your mood board, maybe they can, but just have them floating around.
Yeah, and I think also one of the other things I want to do is really change the perception of the word failure. So for me, failure is something I actually look forward to. It's something, it really is. It's something I embrace. Yeah, it's something I want to experience. And look, I've been in my own business now for 3 years, and there's been a lot of hurdles or failures, if you want to call them that. But they've really taught me a lesson. Like every single one of those has taught me a lesson. And there was this really successful CEO woman, and she is so insanely, incredibly successful. And she said her dad really, really shaped her success. And she basically shared this story saying that as a kid, she used to come home from school and over dinner, her dad would say, right, what are the 3 things you failed at today? And he did it every day, pretty much her whole life. And she would have to go, oh, okay, well, what did I fail at? Or what was it that, that didn't go my way? He would then high five every single failure that she had and give her a hug so that she knew that she was loved. And then he said to her, okay, so what did you learn? And it's not about not making those mistakes again. Like, I'm a big believer of you will probably make those mistakes again. But it's about learning to go, what is the lesson in that? And what have I learnt?
I'm so using that on my kids now.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And it's really good because it gets them to go, well, okay, you know what? It's okay to fail. And culturally, it's interesting. I just got back from Shanghai a couple of weeks ago, and I told them that story, and they were all just like, "Ush, no, like we are just born in a society or a culture where, you know, failure is just not acceptable, and we would never be able to, even in the workplace, let alone at home, say something that we failed at." So I'm really passionate on saying, well, we need to change the concept of failure, of what failure means, and look at it as a learning.
It's kind of like chunks of society are improving on that. So mums, for example, I've been always very open and honest about the fact that I suffered from postnatal depression at a period of time. And now that's quite openly spoken about. Mental illness is spoken about as an aspect to life. Same with kids. We're talking about it more and more and understanding that there's a certain proportion of kids who suffer from mental illness at a very early age, and how do we deal with that? How do we factor that into the curriculum and behavioural management?
Yes.
Do you think it's time for small business to start embracing it and start saying, you know what? Today was a sucky day. It was crap. I had a crap day.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
And, you know, I am working with small businesses, and I'm doing these emotion intelligence coaching plans with them, and, you know, coaching sessions over 3, 6 and 12 months. And it's only after the second or third session where they actually do show that vulnerability and that facade drops and that fear kicks in. And that's where the powerful magic happens, is when you do let your guard down and you do say, you know what, this is what I'm struggling with. Me, myself, I've got my own coach that I still use 2 years into my business. And
all the best coaches have good coaches.
Yeah, and we catch up every 2 weeks. And he is that one that I go to as my sounding board, saying, you know what, this happened and feeling a bit antsy about it. What do you think? So, yeah, even the best coaches need that. So it's really important to have one.
Definitely important to be tapped in to having that person to speak to.
Yeah. And I think vulnerability, again, you know, it goes back to, you know, small business owners wanting to go, well, no, we are successful. We can do this. And yes, you know, I'm always going to encourage that positive mindset, but please don't forget that there are, you know, those issues that do keep you up at night, and when they do, talk to someone.
So just discussing, to recap on what we were just talking about, it's a really important thing is to think about that rabbit hole technique, those 5 questions. And anybody who's just joining the program now, please feel free to get onto the blogs and podcasts page on smallbizmatters.com.au, where we've got all of our blogs and podcasts there for you to re-listen to. There's lots of really great information there. But we're talking about, with Ush Danak here from Collaborate HR, we're talking about, you know, how to use emotional intelligence in your small business. Just now talking about helping yourself be more vulnerable, have a better understanding of the emotions, think about the reactions that you have with both yourself and the people around you. But what does emotional intelligence mean for the hiring process? Because I think that's when we really switch that on and we think to ourselves, remember 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we all had those personality questions.
Yes, psychometric tests.
Yeah, is that still used? I mean, that's corporate world. Is that still used?
I'm a big believer of there's still a space for that. Personally, for me as a small business, you can do emotional intelligence assessments, and I think that's something I would probably choose to do over a psychometric test. And the reason for that is because it covers 26 different areas like empathy, self-awareness, intentionality, and it gives you an understanding, a holistic understanding of that person. And then you can then have that conversation with that potential employee and go, well, here are the areas we need to work on, and here are the areas of your strengths and, you know, areas of improvement, and really go from there.
It's interesting you said strengths and improvements already at that initial interview process, because I guess when you take someone on, nobody's perfect. You're always going to have things that they're going to be working on. Great idea to highlight to them straight away. Look, I think you're fabulous at this, this and this.
Yes.
By the way, we're going to be working on that.
Yes.
Let's readdress that in 6 months, but let's see how you go.
Yeah, and I think, you know, as small business owners, we are really the experts of our industry, technically. Otherwise, we wouldn't be starting a small business. So when we're hiring, we've got that gut instinct already about that person's ability to do the job. What we need to do as small business is to look beyond the technical ability and look at that person as a holistic person and go, well, can they help me grow my business? Are they going to be part of my business from a bigger point of view than just sitting there at their desk doing that technical job? You know, you can even hire someone that isn't technically able, because if you've got the skills, you can teach them and train them. So, you know, I would rather hire someone that has higher EQ than IQ.
Because everything can be learned.
Absolutely.
And often with us as the experts, we're often probably
Yes.
excellent trainers and teachers in what we do as well.
Yeah, so we do need to really think differently about how we're hiring.
Now, there is something that every small business owner dreads when it comes to hiring people, and probably the main reason why people are put off ever taking on staff, and that is, how do you know that that person's going to stick around and not be a time waster? So what's the golden question to ask, which is going to flag for you whether or not that person is going to stick around, or if they're going to be flaky and annoying and just bugger off after they've learned something after 5 minutes?
I'm going to be quite controversial on this answer, and I'm going to say that I don't want to hire someone that is going to stick around. So
What?
for me, it's about hiring someone and going, okay, and having that honest conversation of, I know you're going to want to grow. Everyone's got aspirations. No one is going to want to go, I want to work with a small business for the rest of my life.
I want to be the only employee forever.
So I think if you are honest and open at that initial interview stage and go, okay, well, let's be honest. How long do you want to learn from me? What can I teach you? How can I coach you? How can I mentor you? And I think if you've had that honest conversation with them and they say, you know what? Wow, that's awesome. Thank you. I really appreciate the fact that, I do want to grow. I would love to give you 2 years or whatever it might be. And then you can go, okay, so you are then coaching them, you're mentoring them. And how good does it feel to go at the end of that 2 years, you've helped someone move on? So for me, it's not about hoarding. It's not about keeping them. It's
Hoarding,
about,
great expression.
it's really about going, okay, how long do I have you? Let's be honest. And if you do want to grow, if you do want to be the next EQ guru, how can I help you do that? Because it's about an abundance mentality. So I really want to mentor and coach people that work with me, and I want to encourage that in small business owners. And I think you're deluding yourself as a small business owner if you think you're going to hire someone and they're going to stay with you for the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, so maybe just plan that they're not.
Yes.
and be prepared for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it will change the dynamic of your relationship as well.
And yeah, I guess that honesty is a great idea. I've never heard anybody suggest that, because when they're drawing to the end of that 2 years, then you can have that open and honest conversation.
Yes.
And go, right, what's next? What you going to do? How much longer have I got you for? Because then they can be, guess what, training the next person.
Correct.
And there's a beautiful handover opportunity there.
Yeah.
There's
And
so
I-
many,
and
we
I
lose people so
guarantee
quickly sometimes.
It will change the dynamics of how you interact with that person. It will enable you to be a better coach and mentor, a better trainer. And it will just, make a massive difference.
And
So-
they'll never be a competitor. That's the good,
Correct.
wonderful thing. They'll always be there as another person in your industry that you can
Yes.
rely on and you can bounce ideas off.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that is just a fantastic revelation. I'm very excited. We're here with Ush Danak from Collaborate HR. My name is Alexi Boyd, of course, from Small Biz Matters, and we'll be back after this. So today we've got Ush Danak from Collaborate HR on the program, and we are talking all about the use of emotional intelligence. Just before the break, we were highlighting the importance of using it during the hiring process. And I just had like a full light bulb moment with Ush when she said, I love this expression. This you've got to put this on your business cards. Don't hoard your staff. What a fabulous idea. Why don't you sit down with them at the beginning and go, okay, look, I've not got you for the next 10 years. What are your plans? How can I help you? How can we grow this business and then make you grow so that you move on to other businesses? And guess what? That person is going to be the ultimate referrer, the ultimate connector, the person who's going to take your overflow work, a great person to have in your industry. Plus, you've contributed to the growth of your industry as well by mentoring somewhere. Great concept.
Thank you.
As opposed to just hoarding your staff and
Yes.
going, no, you can't leave. I'm going to handcuff you to your desk. It's a big thing that's we need to not be fearful of, I think, because that's what we are.
Yes,
scared
we
of.
are. We are. That's what we're fearful
We
of.
say we call them time wasters, or we call them Gen Ys, or we call
Yeah.
all the negativity.
Millennials or whatever the new term is.
Whatever the new term is, that's right. So let's talk about emotional intelligence and the application of that with your client relationships.
Yes.
Obviously, you've got to be tapped in. You've got to understand, because we know what the stress points are for our clients because we're solving those problems for them. So beyond that, where does emotional intelligence come in?
Yeah, look, I think it's building those key relationships and building trust with your clients as well. So I think once you've built a good relationship and you've built trust, you can have those difficult conversations that need to be had. So, sometimes as experts in our industry, we do need to say things that might be hard to say. And it's about having that courage to say it. So I was working with a CEO for a business, and he was a typical micromanager and had really bad relationships with all of his staff, and his turnover was really high. And I got some feedback, and he was open to it, and he said, yep, tell me what people think. Number one, he wasn't willing to accept the feedback. Like, he took it pretty badly. So that was one thing we had to have a discussion over. But one thing that was really enlightening, and I think it was because he trusted me, he actually said, I don't think I'm a micromanager, but he set the business up with his dad, so he's very invested in it. And he goes, I'm just curious about my business. And that's why I ask all the questions that I ask. And I said, well, have you ever said that to your team? Like, have you ever said to your team, this is my baby and I'm just really passionate and I just really want to know? And he goes, well, no, they should know that. And I went, well, no.
What, because it intravenously dripped into your emotions?
Yeah, so it's about building that relationship, not only with your client, but maybe the client staff, and just all of them together, and being able to go, well, okay, well, what is the issue here? And then helping them through that and really facilitate that.
From a practical nature, do you think that's something you bring up during your work in progress meetings, perhaps? Do you sort of factor that in as not holding hands and kind of go, how are we all feeling? But how do you bring it into the conversation without it being a bit of a talk fest?
Yeah, so I don't say, the whole how are we feeling. People do find that a bit woo-woo, to be honest, and they don't really like that. So I think initially it's about building trust. So if you've got a good relationship with your client and you've built that trust, things will naturally just open up. And then it's you being actively listening with what's being said or what's not being said, and challenging them and sort of using that as a bit of a tension and pulling that tension when it's needed. So when he was saying, well, I'm not a micromanager, I was able to go, well, actually, I think you are. Might not intend to be a micromanager, but this is how it's coming across to your team. Why is that? Let's explore that. But you can't do that if you don't have a good relationship or if you haven't built that trust and influence or as an expert in what you're doing.
And obviously in the incidents there, they needed to bring in an external person who was then sort of the trust bridge.
Yeah.
Where you were the person who they could trust.
And I think the other point is totally off topic with that, but I guess it links to emotional intelligence and clients. And I've seen it in myself and small businesses is once you've served the client and the engagement's finished, embrace that and don't be fearful of it. So you only can give so much value to a certain amount of time if you are engaged as a small business owner to go into a business for a certain amount of time. I've seen some small businesses make mistakes and try and drag that out, and then it decreases the value that they're giving. So like when that client, I finished 3 months earlier than I did, I had to really embrace that moment and go, okay, wasn't what I planned and it's thrown me out, affecting my OCD. But you know what? I did the best I could. They've got the most value and it is time for me to move on. But what you then do is use that as opportunity to go, right, is there anyone else you can refer me to within your network that might need my services? And out of that, you can get a new client. So I think it's just be self-aware. It goes back to that self-awareness of, when have you served your purpose and when has that ended? And back yourself when it's ended and go, it's okay. I've done what I needed to do and I am going to get that next client. I'm going to ask for a referral.
Yeah, and I would be surprised if anybody did a really fantastic job and more business didn't come away from it either way, because take pride in that, I guess.
Yes.
One thing that myself in my bookkeeping practice is that it's a little bit it's a juggle when you start getting busy enough that you can turn away clients to decide which ones are not for you.
Yes.
And sometimes the personality fit is not there. You might find that you might have sort of the hackles on the back of your neck go up and you think there's something doesn't quite feel right with this person. How do you know you're not jumping to conclusions without really giving that client relationship a go? Or when do you trust those instincts? I know that's a really high-end question, but how do you...
I think you've just got to trust that gut. Like, everyone's got that inner voice that speaks, and I think you've really got to be in tune with it and really listen to that voice. I've made mistakes. I've worked with clients when I started on in my business really early on, just for cash flow purposes. And I knew, you have that chase to win the client, and then you win the client and then you get this sinking feeling of, oh crap, I actually now got to do the work.
Yeah, I didn't really want to work with that person.
So I think that's probably a good indication that you don't want to really work with them.
Yes. Or if the phone rings and you see their number pop up and you go, ugh.
Or the other time I've realised it is when I've taken on a client and I realised that our values aren't aligned. So, you know, they do things that really compromise who I am and who I believe, or they haven't taken my advice on.
I won't work for arborists. That's my greeny, passionate tree person coming out. I will not work with them. I will not give them my service.
So think about values and think about that, you know, that gut feeling, and also think about, do you have that dread, you know, once you've sent that proposal and they've signed, because you still got that cooling off period, and go, you know what, actually, you know, we're not a fit. But if you're clear on who you are and what you stand for, it should be a pretty easy decision to make.
What's the best way to let that client go, in your opinion?
I've actually used the words that we are not a right fit, and I will not be able to serve you to the best of my ability, but I can put you in touch with someone that can.
But doesn't that put you out there as being someone who is inflexible? Or
No, I think it's someone that's authentic, it's true to themselves, and there is so much power in being able to walk away. And honestly, I think you'll be respected for it.
Because I guess saying that the I'm too busy thing is a bit...
Oh, yeah, look, I probably wouldn't say I'm too busy. I would just say we're not the right fit.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to be able to serve you and your needs.
Yeah.
At this moment in time. Or, you know, I'm not the best expert in that issue that you need right now. And I always try and put them in touch with someone else if I can.
That's right. And that's why being a part of a professional association is always so useful, because you can just direct them straight back to the professional association website, and you know they're going to get someone good.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have just covered off so much today, Ush. We've talked about using emotional intelligence for yourself and the way you conduct yourself, both in an environment versus even in your home life as well. And we've talked about going down the rabbit hole and how to pull yourself back up again, not to mention the fact that using emotional intelligence when you're hiring people and working with your staff. We could go, this has just gone so fast, we could talk about this for hours and hours. I'd love to have you come back on the show again.
Thank you.
I'd love to talk to you a little bit about the interview process, because that completely eludes me. Finding the right people. But I love your idea of talking about not hoarding people.
Also, if anyone does have any questions, you know, if they've got topics they want us to talk about, more than happy to
Absolutely.
To do that too.
We've got the Small Biz Matters Facebook page, of course, where we'll mention when this interview is available in full. You can have a listen to that on the blogs and podcast pages on smallbizmatters.com.au. And, of course, make sure you sign up to the newsletter to find out all the great things that are happening and the events that are happening in our local area. Thanks for coming on the program,
Thank you.
And, of course, tell us your website if people want to find out more about you.
Yeah, so it's www.collaboratehr.com.au.
Awesome. And thank you once again. We look forward to having you on in the next few weeks. Those of you who have been listening, of course, make sure you connect with us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and all the other bits and pieces. Actually, no, that's it. I only do 2 because it's too hard to monitor the others. Thank you for listening, everyone. We look forward to speaking to you next week. This has been Small Biz Matters, and my name is Alexi Boyd.